The moment is finally here. We're day 2 at Adobe Max. I can't believe it. I'm a little nervous. I gotta tell you, so my voice cracks a little bit. You'll know why in a second. Because we have the most famous graphic designer in America here. Paula Scher is here, you guys. Make some noise! Look at that panning shot. Okay, all right. Paula, thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
I'm just thrilled. How much time do we have with you? I just want to honor that first. Let's check our watches.
You have until about 5:45.
Oh, okay. We'll get some questions in.
Okay.
Okay, so for all the people that are watching on our live stream, there's a whole group of people, a whole bunch of human beings here. We're going to keep her warm, so we're going to get right into it. I heard, first of all, that your talk went a little long. We got kicked out of it. So the first question I want to start with is just a really easy one. Was there a question that somebody had asked that you wanted to answer, but you ran out of time to answer?
No.
Okay. Short and sweet. Okay.
I think the questions were pretty much along a similar vein, and I think it's always the same question, and the question is, how do you get somebody else to do something? You know, hire me, buy my logo, pick the colors I liked, you know, all of that, and that's the eternal question. I don't really have the answer to that all the time.
You
Sometimes,
don't?
No.
Just drop a little pearl of wisdom on us. How do you do that? How do you get your clients to go out of their comfort zone, to maybe change a pattern of behavior?
I don't always.
Okay.
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do because I can be persuasive, and I am very I don't give up. You know, like I'm sort of like a dog with a bone about it. You know, that I'll make a joke about it, and then that'll become the joke, and the joke is that I'm going to make them do what I want me to do because I think it's going to be better for them, and that they can decide they believe that, or they can decide I'm a pain in the neck. You know, I mean, it really can go either way, but it is in service of them because they're the beneficiary of it. You know, if the thing doesn't get made, that's too bad for me, but it's really too bad for them.
Well, but you're Paula Scher, and you could do that, and you're
No, that's really not true. That's really not true. There is not. The reason I have so much work produced is I've been working 17 times longer than anybody standing here. I've been just doing this for 50 years. My God, if I didn't have enough pieces to show, that would be really so sad. Because I've been doing it forever. When you do it forever, and people recognize that you have a reputation and that there is some basis and reason for them to listen to you, they may listen to you because it's their money, and if they put the money down, they will listen. Also, the fees matter. You know, that if the fee is higher, they tend to listen more.
Ooh, I like that. That's music to my ears.
But they got to want to pay the fee. That's the problem with that. It works both ways.
So if you pay more for something, I think I've always told people this: if they pay you more, they respect you more.
Well, sometimes they just don't know if it's good. I pay more for a coat sometimes because I think it's nicer than the one that was cheaper. Anybody else do that? Sure, we all do that. That's also that. I mean, it's part of it is perception. Part of it is actually knowing what you're doing. Part of it is understanding how to present something to someone so that they understand it, and that's really a matter of trying to understand how and what they see, so you can put things in front of them in the order that they can begin to grasp what you're doing. If you make a terrific design and you hand it to somebody and say, here, and they don't know what they're looking at, there's no reason that they're going to feel trusting of it. So you want to set up a condition where you become a teacher to a degree. Some people sell, I teach, and that I think they both work well. I was never a particularly good salesman, but I am a good teacher, and that's what I've done for a long time, and I fit the part. You know, I mean, you have a reputation and there's a perception about you, and that's helpful, but you still have to build it, and that comes from years of doing all kinds of work. A lot of designers, to get themselves noticed, and I did this when I was young, is take on pro bono projects and do them so you can make the work you want to make, so you can show it. If you show work and you're not proud of it, and you say, well, this is really good except for this part here where somebody bad interfered and ruined it, that doesn't count. You can't get away with that. The piece has to be terrific, and you have to feel terrific talking about it. So if you're in a job and you're not allowed to make that work, then you have to change your job. If you're working for yourself and you're in your own business and the clients are making you do crappy things that you don't feel good about, then you have to find a way to make things where you have complete control and do the work you want to do, because that's the work you're going to show. And that's the work you're going to get known for. I mean, the public theater is pretty much a free job. You know, I did that for years because it was exercise for me and because I knew I could make something I'd be proud of. And that it was especially important if I had some long slogs with a corporate client and it didn't go the way I wanted it to. And that happens many times. I'm not that different from you. I'm just around longer.
So on the subject of pro bono work, is there one project that you felt like it changed the course of your career?
There were a couple. There was when my partner Terry Coppell and I in the 80s started a business called Coppell and Scher. We made a little book called Great Beginnings that we mailed out, and you know, we did that as a promotion for ourselves. And the book was the beginnings of famous novels and the style and period in which they were written. And it was really a little typographic gem, and it got reproduced in a lot of textbooks on how to design with type. And it kind of put us on the map, so that the reputation for typography began with that, and that was a free thing we did. There was a cover I did for AIGA that was a hand-painted thing that was sort of a precursor to the paintings I do, and it was a free job, and it paid $1,000 for expenses, or something like that. And I did it all with handwriting, so I didn't have any expenses, so I got to keep the $1,000. But, you know, it was still a free job. But, you know, I've done that. I'm doing it right now. I got involved in a campaign for mental illness that I'm working on that was a complete donation because I thought I could make it powerful, and I felt like it would be wonderful to really do something that I could put out into society that would do some good. You know, I mean, I do things like that all the time, and I showed you, if you were in the lecture, the Type Directors Club was a free job, and I used that to experiment with. You know, that the free work isn't free. It's not like you're not getting anything for it. If you're just giving it away and you're not getting anything back from it, then definitely don't do it. But the point is that you should be looking at it as a way that you can find your own spirit, or you can do some good, or whatever it is you want it to do. Otherwise, no.
I think you're nourishing some souls right now and also shocking a few others, because I have to say that hundreds of awards, museums, inclusions, and every single thing I can think of, that I'm shocked to hear that Paula Scher still needs to do pro bono work to kind of explore your creativity.
Well, don't be ridiculous. We all do that. I mean, that's painters do things. I mean, most of us want the opportunity to be able to try something and even fail, and that you're not really allowed to do that in your day job. You can't fail. You have to meet some standard, and you know, design is messy. I mean, to grow in it, you have to experiment. To make experiments, you're going to fail. And the thing is that failures are great because now you know what not to do. That's a really good learning thing. Knowing what not to do saves you a lot of time, but then every now and then you discover something that's possible. And that's great. That's a breakthrough. That's what you want to have happen. So that if it's a day job and you're doing this thing just to earn $1, I don't even know that the community needs you. I mean, I think that as designers, we have a responsibility to raise the expectation of what design can be, so that each piece that's done elevates an area. If I once did a parking garage for a client, and I didn't want to do the job, and he said, "You can do whatever you want, just do it." And I designed a parking garage that I'm really proud of, because all of a sudden parking garages were not bad things to design anymore. That you break into an area that may have been crummy and you've turned it into something that can be terrific. And I think we all want that to happen, because it broadens the ability of what our possibilities are.
On the flip side, have you taken on one of those projects thinking this is where I get to do something cool and it didn't work out that way?
Yep. lots of times. Sometimes somebody asks me to do something, and I just do a horrible job and feel terrible and tell them to go someplace else. But it don't, I mean, it's happened. You're not good every time you sit down. I mean, it takes time and energy, and it's not equal every day. It's not like you go in every day and you're equally brilliant. Some days I've gone through periods where I've been so fallow I haven't had a decent idea for months. And I'm sort of falling back on old tricks. I mean, I'm a human being. People stink from time to time. It's okay. It's not terrible to do something horrible. It's just depressing when you're doing it.
What do you do to get out of that funk if you enter into the funk?
I've had fallow periods where everything fell flat, and generally the way I get out of it is going to a lot of museums and seeing a lot of things that spark some ideas that that are dormant, and then I get invigorated and I can do it. And I'm lucky because I live in New York City, and you live here, and I mean, you got some of the best museums here now, so that there's nothing that's keeping you. Well, I guess you all don't live here, do you? You came here. Well, maybe that isn't. Maybe you live in bad places. I don't know. Is that possible? But if you live in places that there are things around that you can access that are gonna sort of spark your enthusiasm and bring ideas to you, that you have to go and do that. It's sort of like feeding yourself. It's nourishing.
And if you don't live near a thing, you could always travel to New York or other places, right?
Well, there are a lot of good places.
Yeah,
I just realized that, of course, people don't act. They actually came here like I did. I just made an assumption everybody lived in L.A. and could go everywhere.
There's a lot of L.A. people here, though. There are. Okay, so here's another question. This one Matthew kind of helped me out with because he did go to your talk. He was sharing with us about the Parsons New School. And there's this thing that we talk about a lot, that attachment, like designers get attached to things, clients get attached to things, people get attached really easily, and it causes a lot of friction in our lives. And what you realized in that year of mean tweets was that it was the students who lived with this didn't want to change.
Right.
I have so many questions about this, because you don't strike me as a social media person, but here you are, you're answering the tweets. Like, why do that even? And how do you process all that?
They asked me to do it.
Oh my gosh!
And I really didn't like the idea of it, but then I turned out to be really good at it. And also, it deflated it. It made it funny, instead of awful, because the amount of criticism was huge, and also there were phony rumors around the school, like about how much I was being paid for it, which it didn't, it wasn't anywhere near reality. So the whole thing became inflated, and I think that my learning from it was really when the students left and it stopped, and that I didn't think it was that simple. But of course, I mean, I should have understood that, because that was their identity. They went to school there. That even if they didn't have a good one, that was theirs, and that it was as if I had come and they saw me as a big famous designer, and I didn't even go to Parsons, and I'd taken this thing away, like I'd done some terrible thing. And I get that. I could really see how they could feel that way. And then the fact that it changed so quickly was really amusing. But we have these sort of crazy emotional responses to these things that we feel ownership over. Like it might be an identity for a school, or it might be the way there was a store on a block and it left and something else replaced it. And there's this feeling of familiar and comfort with these things we have, and when they're taken away, it becomes very depressing and you get very angry about it. And that's how people respond to these things. But that's different from the kind of like online criticism of logos when they first emerge, which a lot of that is just people being silly online. There's serious criticism, and then there's criticism that's just somebody doesn't have enough work to do.
Okay. I want to follow up on something you said earlier, in that you said that you're not a great salesperson, but you're a really good teacher. So when somebody's having this issue of letting go, let's move it back into the professional realm with clients, right?
Right.
So you're saying if you just show up and here it is, love it or hate it, that's going to create problems. So are there these intermediate steps that you take, and can you Can you outline them for us? Like how might we have greater success in helping our clients deal with change?
Well, a lot of it starts before you begin designing, because it has to do with your conversation with them and your access to them. And this assumes that the group here, in talking to them, are having direct access with clients and not working for somebody who has direct access with clients. It's very hard when you're not the person who has direct access for clients, because you're having somebody interpret what they said and they may not be doing it accurately, and that could be bad. But mostly, if you ask somebody what they're looking for in a couple of key ways, they're going to be able to tell you. And the one thing that I've done at Pentagram is we have this book of trademarks that has, I don't know, about 500 marks that we've done over the years. And particularly if there are 3 participants who are the clients or more, I give them each a book, and I tell them to take a sticky note and mark the ones they love in one color and the ones they hate in the next color. So that way I can tell what their tastes are. Is somebody really a modernist, or does somebody like a lot of curlicues? That's an important thing to know. If you have a group of 3 and they come out all the same and they pick the same ones, that's fantastic. If they come out all different, you're in trouble, because you're going to have different tastes making decisions around the table. So you have to know what they see. Sometimes you just ask them what they like, and after they get through Nike and Apple, you can get into the real things that you need to find out, like what are their competing businesses, etc. But they'll always say those 3 things. Sometimes it's something else, but it'd be Nike, Apple, and the one you didn't expect. But you do learn a lot from that, because that tells you a bit about what kind of form they like. And if they talk about their competitors, find out how much they want to be like them and how much they want to be different from them. And that's very revealing. But these are things that give you cues on how to design something. And if you don't ask those questions, you're really not in a position to be informed about how to approach it. It's one thing to say you have a good idea for a form or interpreting the business, but if you do it and it's very pure and very modernist and you have somebody who doesn't like that, you're going to have a problem with the form. So you have to know that from the get-go, and that way you sort of know how to do it. So it's just considering, pretend, and women will understand this, pretend like you have to shop for somebody else. That's a little bit of what designing from somebody else is. You got to go out and you got to get them a shirt you know they'd like. And you have to analyze everything they wore and what they always bought and what they never bought. And then you know sort of how to pick it. That's kind of what you're doing when you design. It's a girly answer.
I love that answer, actually. You actually gave me some really great actionable things that we could implement. So super awesome. The idea that you can ask your client about competitors, like if they want to be the same or different, how do you phrase that in a way that allows them to tell you the truth? Because I think every client you ask that, they're like, we want to be totally different, but just like everybody else.
Well, first of all, they're human. And you have to assume that's going to happen from the get-go. If everybody goes to a party, they're all wearing black. And you can't make somebody who always wears black put on a pink party dress and go to the party. You can make them wear a red belt on the black dress, but that's about as far as you're going to take them, and you got to let it go. Just make it a terrific red belt and might zip up the whole outfit. But you have to think about things in those terms. If a client tells you that they don't want to be like someone, but they're competing with them, it means they want to be like them a little bit. Not just in the bad ways, in the good ways. And you have to find out what that means. Sometimes that doesn't have anything to do with their graphic design. Sometimes it has to do with the way the company's organized, or the kind of media they get, or something they envy about the other person. And I think a little perception in the conversation will help you do it. It's not that different from talking to a friend and trying to find out what they want or what's bothering them if they sat down and talked to you. These people are coming because they need something, and you have to figure out what it is they need. And the way to know if you're on the right track is to play back some description of something that might be along the lines of what you might do for them, to see if you get a positive read on their face as they're nodding. Is this something, or do they not know what you're talking about? And you can use examples. Should it be like such and such? Or what do you think of this? And those answers are very key when they start to tell you that they like something or don't like something. And you should listen very carefully when they do, because they're telling you what to make for them. And then you just make it. See how easy it is?
So do you think designers get conflicted when they ask these kinds of questions, but then they have their happy ears on and they don't actually listen to what the clients say back? Is that where some of the conflict might come in?
I'm not sure. I think that the designers who've gotten themselves in positions of having direct contact with specific clients and have had success with it know how to ask the questions, and those who have done it less don't. And I think it's a learning curve, and some of it has to do with watching somebody do it successfully yourself. It has to do, so much of how we work has to do with where we've worked, because what you see is what you know, and you really need to see somebody demonstrate it. When I worked in the record industry, I worked for a very powerful art director named John Berg, who made 1 million record covers. And he was a fighter, and he never gave in. And he could persuade anybody to anything. But he had a big office with lots of awards on the wall and seemed to have a lot of power, and some of the bands were intimidated by him. But I watched the fact that he was always steady on demanding a certain level of quality and not letting them screw it up. And that meant being more involved with them, having more meetings with them, actually having to put in more time into that situation to make it go his way. That's what he did. And I learned that from him, that you don't give it up. You know, if somebody says, well, I really don't like that, you might stand back and say, well, let me show it to you, but in a slightly different way. You know, that there may be a way that you get around it. You might make some slight modification that actually makes it work for that person, and it may make the job better also. It's sort of a tenacity not to let go of the opportunity of making it to be the thing that you're going to be the most satisfied about showing. That's really all it's about.
I'd love to make a hard pivot right now and talk about something else. Is that okay?
Do whatever you want.
Okay. On the serious abstract, I'm sure almost everybody here has seen it, so I'm going to switch gears here because I watch it. I feel like I get to know something about you, and I'm connected to it. What was that like for you during, and what happened to your life after, if anything had changed at all? Like, you have cameras following you the whole time. That's got to be an unusual experience.
Yeah, that was annoying.
Okay.
The interview parts were sort of like this. Like Richard Press, who is the director, is a terrific director, and he filmed a lot of moments where I'm describing sort of the things I'm talking about now. You know, like how to work with a client, the diagram of the meeting, which was actually in my book, Make It Bigger, and he didn't tell me what he was doing with all that information at the point he got it. So he would want a certain scene of me behaving a certain way. So he'd make me run up and down a flight of staircases about 17 times, or he'd make me walk out in New York City and have me come back and, somebody blocked me and I had to go back and walk it again, and I had to do it in high heels on a really hot day. I mean, it was really annoying. And you know, until I saw the film done, I wanted to kill him. Because the worst thing he did, here's where he was truly a genius. The way they're set up, there's a format, and if you watch Jonathan Heffler's, which is out now, the format's very similar. And the thing is that it's a story about the person and the work they do, but they focus on a project, and that at the beginning they talk about the project, and by the end of the thing you see the project being realized, and that's sort of the modus operandi of those. So we were going to do the public theater poster because it was the only poster I knew would come out in time for the thing to end, because they have to be out in May, and they started filming in January, so the timing of it was perfect. And in my book, this diagram of a meeting is, do you guys know what this is? I don't know if you saw it. It's sort of this, where I'm describing how you meet with a client, and there's a group of people, and there's a level of expectation, and when you get to the top, it's the pinnacle, and then somebody who usually wasn't at the meeting or was left out of the process starts taking it down, and like sort of like showing all the negatives of it, and it comes down to below when you walked in the door.
Oh my God.
And then you got to take it back up, and you get it up to a certain point. And it's not as high as the original point of expectation was, but it's pretty good, and you got to end the meeting there. Because if you don't end the meeting, it's going to devolve down, and it'll be, below ground level. So he wanted me to describe this thing and draw it at the same time. And he had me bending over a piece of glass where my face was showing through, and I was doing this thing with a marker, and I could never get the damn diagram to fit on the glass. So he kept making me retake it, which was really, really awful, and I hated it, and I was mad at him. But what was miraculous was I had no idea where he was going to use it, and he used it in that public theater meeting where I'm describing it. Now, the public theater clients are probably the sweetest people on the planet, and they never really reject anything, but they do make rebuttals. And I watched this thing, and it was totally true. And I don't know how he knew that was going to happen, but he knew it was going to happen because it always happens, even when you don't even know it's happening. So that was
genius.
To his credit. He was a genius.
Yeah. It could just be that's how all client meetings are, too, right? There's some truth to that. And everybody here is like, I've experienced that before. And okay, so now you're like Netflix everywhere. Are people like yelling your name down the street and whatever? Is your life different after the Netflix series?
Not much.
No?
No. I mean, there were some people I got a lot of calls for business from it, and they were really bad calls.
Bad calls. So Netflix, not good clients, but you do get client calls.
I got a lot,
Okay.
and they were all sort of crappy. Not just people who didn't know what they were doing, and letters from people who said, one woman sent me a logo she had designed for her business, and stuff like that.
So they were filming on and off from January to May?
Yeah. And they're editing. And he did things I didn't know he was going to do. Like, they called me down to this sort of post-production thing, and they said, quote Betty Davis in a movie, and I would quote her, and then my voice was running over it was wonderful what he did. It was terrific. He was great.
Wow.
Good director.
Yes. Okay. Now, boy, we only have like 10 more minutes here, right? 8 minutes. Okay. I'm going to switch gears here one more time.
Okay.
You mentioned your former partner, Terry.
Yep.
And I was reading that recession hits in 91.
Yeah.
I just want to know how you deal with adversity, because we see you as the person who succeeded and just on Netflix and winning awards and just doing whatever you want, world beater. But there's this period in time when you guys split up as your partnership, 7 years in, I think. And how did that feel? What was that process like about, God, this sucks a little bit? Or does it?
Well, it was sad. I mean, it wasn't a bad breakup. It was a necessary breakup. We had a business that we're based on both of our businesses, and Terry was a magazine designer, and in the Bush recession, there just weren't any magazines to design. So we had to stop drawing a salary because we'd moved into this new place, and it was very expensive, and I was sort of living off the expense account, and he couldn't afford to do it. So he took a job at Esquire. And I was running the business by myself for about a year and a half, and then Pentagram asked me to join, and then I closed it all down. And that's what happened. And if Terry hadn't left, I don't know if I would have joined Pentagram. I have no idea about that. I just know at that time it was the best thing to do.
How do you, if we can rewind the tape, how do you process that? Because if we're in a business that may or may not be working out with a partner, what are signals that maybe this isn't, it obviously worked out pretty good for you.
Well,
so how do you know?
I mean, we were good friends, and we're still friends.
Mm-hmm.
And we're very different personalities. But I enjoyed him because he made life easy for me because he just made me laugh all the time. He's a very funny man. And, we had a really good time starting up that company, and we had a lot of success in the first 4 or 5 years, and the recession was hard. Recessions are hard to overcome if you're in a business that isn't recession-proof. If you're diversified, it's much easier than if you're really in one area. And if that area goes down, you're really in trouble. Partnerships are difficult because you have to share, and you have to share equally, even though you might not be putting in equal amounts of work, and that makes it problematic. Pentagram is a remarkable relationship because everybody shares the money equally, and the partners have very broad differences of scale of business. But you have to make that decision as a person to make that thing work. Things that are on the outside, it's funny, I think that things that are caused by outside influences in funny ways are easier to live with in a partnership than things that come from the personal failings of the other individual or yourself. Those are harder to deal with.
As a design business, how can we
make it recession proof? Is such a thing possible?
Save a lot of money. The economy goes up and down. I've been through a lot of recessions. When I joined Pentagram, there was a recession still. And then there was the 2008 crash.
Oh my gosh.
I had an architect partner whose whole business fell apart because he was an architect, and there just was no work for architects. I mean, this stuff happens, and the best thing I can say about graphic design within that is if you're diversified, you have a better shot of working, and it's good to have good relationships with a lot of your old clients because you may need them when the chips are down, and a lot of them come through. So yeah, it's not easy, but everybody survives it. It's just not easy.
Yeah.
And if everybody's going through it at the same time, then it doesn't feel as bad. If it's only you, then it's terrible.
Okay, I'm gonna sneak in one more question. Is that okay? How are we doing? Okay, 4 minutes. Okay, I have to ask this question. What gets you out of bed each morning? Where's your fuel come from? What motivates you to do what you do, to continue in business and be who you are?
Well, if you don't want a philosophical answer, I'll give you a practical one.
I want both.
Okay, I don't know about the philosophical one.
That's the one I want.
The practical one is that I have a project coordinator named Rusty, who's fantastic, and he puts everything in my calendar, and he sends me an email the night before to make sure I do it. And what gets me out of bed in the morning is I've got to be somewhere. So I just get up and I do it, and I don't worry about it too much because getting out of bed is the hard part. Not because I'm depressed or anything, just because I like sleeping. So I look at the thing and I go, oh, I got to be at downtown at 8:30, and then the traffic's bad, and then I move. And if I don't have to, then I don't move so much. That's all. It's not that complicated.
Okay, so we have 1 more minute. Can I get the philosophical answer? That one intrigues me even more.
I like making things. That's really what I'm interested in, and I like it even more the older I am, because I find that all the things that I sort of achieve, like I can't even remember when I'm putting together a talk or a lecture and I get an idea for it, what to even show, because I forget about my old work very quickly and I'm really on to the next thing, and that's what drives me, and it's fun. If it isn't fun, it isn't worth doing, because it's, clients are irritating. Sometimes there isn't a good economy. Sometimes you're stuck with some long, sloggy job you can't get rid of. I mean, there's all of that. So you better love it, because there's no reason to do it otherwise. Really, there are other decent ways to make a living. I hear real estate is actually still a good profession.
Okay, I think we're going to end on that. That was lovely. Thank you very much. Guys, round of applause. Paula Scher, guys. Thank you very much.